I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of Ascension Parish Council, September 7th, 2017. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge. The invocation to be led by Councilman Randy Kluai.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for this little cool spell in this high pressure zone that's going to hopefully push this hurricane away from us and give some relief to the Gulf South region where we've been hammered. Lord, we ask that you push it all the way into the Atlantic and spare everyone in the United States and help the people on the islands that have already been hit. Lord, it's with a heavy heart that we ask for you to put your hand down to the Molaire family for the tragic loss of Lexi Molaire last week. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, for the roll call, Madam Secretary, we have Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Can't be here tonight. Everyone else is present. Chair's additions. I don't have any additions to the agenda. I have a short report on the work that's being done at the east side meeting location, the Ascension Parish Courthouse on the east side. I went by there today, and I think we'll all be pleased to know that the displays are installed, and I think they're going to be real good for the future here. When we go back over on September the 21st, that'll all be in service. They're also working on putting the voting buttons in service. That's in testing right now. Probably won't be in service until the October meeting. For the September 21st meeting, I will be out of town. Vice Chair Oliver Joseph will be the chair, and I'd like to ask Mr. Kluai if he would stand in the second chair for the September 21st meeting.
Not a problem.
Okay. Public comment and sign-in periods. If you have a comment on an item, please come up to the podium and pick up a card and return it to the secretary. We're going to next go into session as a Board of Review, which is something that we have to do every year on ad valorem taxes. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to convene as the Board of Review.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Satterley, second by Councilman Lambert, Todd Lambert. Any opposition? Motion carries. Will now be in session as the Board of Review. I'd like Mr. Justin Champlin, the Assistant Tax Assessor. Did I get that? Or the Deputy? I don't know what your real.
Deputy.
Chief Deputy.
Chief Deputy.
Okay.
Well, that's
Mr.
the
Justin
technical.
Champlin.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm here on behalf of Assessor Mark Smiley. The assessment lists were open for public inspection for a period of 15 calendar days, which began August 15, 2017, and ended August 29, 2017. During this exposure period, the assessment lists have been changed when necessary for clerical or erroneous assessments, and I hereby certify the 2017 Ascension Parish Assessment List to you as the Board of Review.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. So we have no appeals to be heard, and I would request a motion to adopt the 2017 assessment for Ascension Parish. Motion by Councilman Cagnolati, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any opposition, any discussion? Motion carries. We will now reconvene back into as a regular council. And the parish president's report, Mr. Matassa.
Good evening, Council. I just want to let y'all know that the Move Ascension Transportation Project is starting Monday morning on Rowdy Road. T. Baker Smith is going to have some people out there starting that project. We had a couple conference calls from the governor's office on the hurricane situation, and At first, they were going to stage 200 National Guard people in buses over there for, not for us, but to help others. And then we got a call today that the only thing that might come would be the buses. So that's where we're at on that. We don't know anything other than that. And they have a volleyball tournament in the gym anyway, so they'll be able to have that. Other than that, that's it. Thank you, unless you got any questions.
Any questions for the parish president? Thank you. Consent agenda, item A, adoption of August 3rd, 2017 regular council meeting minutes. Item B, adoption of August 17, 2017 regular council meeting minutes. Item C, professional services contract with MB Design Consultants, LLC, on the re-roofing of Ascension Parish East and West Bank courthouses, project number PM 17090-2, to provide bidding, construction administration, and closeout technical expertise, not to exceed $25,000. Item D, approval of change order number 1, Ascension Parish Governmental Complex Energy Generator, Total Energy Solutions, LLC, project number ENG 13-020-02, to increase the contract amount by $14,876.45 to compensate for the additional effort beyond the original scope of work to get the generator load tested and installed correctly. Is there any desire to remove any item from the consent? Hearing none. We have a motion by Councilman Cluide, second by Councilman Todd Lambert to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion, any opposition? Consent agenda is approved. General business, number 8, amendment number 1 to master contract with HNTB to include task order number 2 in the amount of $1,204,375 with a total amount not to exceed $1,954,375.
Yes, sir. Good evening. This is basically a housekeeping item that I inadvertently left off the Transportation Committee. It was a task order that's already been approved. I did not include the contract amendment in that committee to come to the full council. So that's what this item is. It's again, an approved task order through the Transportation Committee for the program management on transportation projects.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Councilwoman Casso, second by Councilman Lawler. Any questions? Mr. Cluide, no question?
No, I'm good.
Any discussion, any opposition?
Thank you.
Motion, thank you, Mr. Enlow. Item number 9, approval of request for quote, Ms. Shivers, for A, Lamar Dixon Expo Center, Chiller, CMC Corporate Solutions, Lamar Dixon Soccer Field and Safety Fence, Scott Pence. Ms. Jones Shivers.
Good evening. On February 14, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 3 quotes for the Lamar Dixon Expo Center chiller replacement. The initial award has been deemed non-responsive. After review, the Purchasing Department and Lamar Dixon recommend accepting the second lowest quote submitted by CMC Corporate Solution and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this project.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Cluide, second by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion, any opposition? Motion carries.
On August 16, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 2 quotes for the Lamar Dixon Soccer Field Security and Safety Fence. After review, the Purchasing Department and Recreation Department recommend accepting the quote submitted by Scott Fence USA LLC and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this project.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any discussion, any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Shivers. Or is that all?
I got one more.
I don't have it on here, but go ahead.
It's the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item 10, approval of professional engineering selection committee recommendation for RFQ master planning and design for new fire stations, number 80, number 20, and number 51, fire district number 1. Ms. Shivers, I have a speaker on this, if you don't mind. I have Mr. Wayne Hill, Chief Wayne Hill.
We would like to, as the district and fire chiefs on the 3 departments, we would like for Mijou to be able to get this award because he has been working with the district on the fire departments that has been flooded. So he's been working with us on that. He has also built other fire stations, and our main goal is to build all main stations and substations to make them look alike throughout the district.
Thank you, Chief Hill. Any
Thank you.
questions for Chief Hill? Thank you, sir. Ms. Shivers.
On August 8, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 13 proposals for master planning and design for the new fire stations in Fire District Number 1. After review, the Engineering Selection Committee recommended accepting the proposals submitted by Domain Architects, Meyer Engineering, LTD, and Mujo Architecture, and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this service.
Make a motion for Mujo.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman, was it Cagnolati? Todd Lambert, to accept Mr. Mujo for this contract. Is that correct? Any discussion? Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I'm just curious as why we wouldn't go with the number 1 rated architect. I mean, we have an engineering committee that looked at this.
She's not going to answer that.
Is there anybody that can answer that? Or?
Well, not from,
I can, you want me to help you out?
or maybe
I'm
Councilman
afraid
Johnson.
that you're going to help me out.
The information for the top 3, the fire department's requested Mujo based on the experience from working with them since the flood as far as some things that they helped them with. That's why I'm making my recommendation on that.
I just have a hard time disregarding what our engineering review panel has stated, Matt. You know, I mean, it's not, I just don't understand that.
Councilman Joseph.
Yeah. Once again, Councilman Benny is correct. Out the top 3, he can make a motion on any one of them. Okay, but I'm like you. I feel that if we had 3 of them and we have 3 fire stations, you know what I'm saying? I don't think, we didn't ask for one to design all 3 of them, or they ought to be alike. I just feel that if we was going to do it, I mean, we're going to do the same thing with roads. We're going to do the same thing with every other building, you know? So, my question is why we don't share, you know? But, hey, I just don't feel I agree with the one person having all of them. I just don't, okay?
Councilman Johnson.
If I may, part of what they're doing is all 3, basically you're going to have one design for all 3 buildings. So you'll have, instead of having 3 different architects, the reason to go with the one is because you try to, everything's going to mirror each other. So they'll be able to take this plan and go anywhere they want with it in the parish when they start building another station. And so the design, this will be it. The only thing that'll happen with it is the meeting rooms will be able to be taken off between the main station and the substations. They don't need the meeting space there. So the same design, the only difference in it will be that it'll be designed to where the meeting space can be taken off for substations and so forth, so that they'll all be the same from here out going forward.
Okay, further,
Economy of scale.
Councilman Lawler.
I guess my question is, though, is couldn't the top-ranked engineering firm, architecture firm, do the same thing? Wouldn't they be able to design the building and use it on all 3?
I'm sure they could, but that's not what they requested. I'm honoring their request.
Further discussion. Councilman Satterley.
Not so much discussion or maybe clarity. What is on the table right now?
This is to accept to recommend approve Mr. Mujo as the architect for the design of stations 80, 20, and 51.
So in reference to Councilman Lawler's concern, the Engineering Selection Committee ranked Domain 1, Myers 2nd, and Mujo 3rd and what's on the table is that we just go with the third one. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
All right. My comment would be, with other councilmen, I forget who said what now, but there's a 319, 314, and 311 respectively, and I put it in quotes, difference between the two, top three. That's between the first two, a 5-point difference, and between the first and the third, the biggest difference, 8. If you divide that again, it's a sum, you've heard me say this before, by the number of actual members we had on the engineering review selection committee, if I got that right, then just for example, if there are 5, the difference in the 5 between Domain and Meyer becomes a singular point. I have not admittedly performed statistics on this. I didn't think this would be a big contentious issue, Mr. Chairman, but that would clearly indicate to me again, I'm sure if I did, that there would be no difference, and for that matter, no difference with Mougeot. As a result, I think the Engineering Selection Committee is clearly telling us that either one of those top 3 firms are capable of doing the job. So I personally have little problem whatsoever. I'm sorry, Aaron, because I think as it was pointed out maybe by Mr. Joseph, we have the right to go with the top recommendation, or actually I wouldn't do it. We could go all the way down to, and I don't want to mention the name, but I'll just say number 11, where there is a, I don't know, 50 or 60 or more point difference. And even after divided by 5, you would have 10 to 12 point difference, and that's quite substantial. And if I had done statistics, I'm sure it would be statistically real in terms of it really being different. So I'm probably, unless I can hear a big argument from Mr. Lawler or anyone else, support what's on the table in just deference to my colleagues. Thank you for listening.
Further discussion, questions, comments? Any opposition?
Yes.
You have opposition, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Joseph.
No.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Satterley.
Yes.
Councilman Kluot.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
No.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Dawson.
Yes. Motion carries. I would like to recognize, we have 2 other fire chiefs here. We have Chief Nelson Pinion, 5th Ward in Sorrento. Nelson, you can stand. Yeah, thanks. and Nat Stevens from Gosmer, two of our fire chiefs. We appreciate the effort that all y'all, including Chief Wayne Hill, Nat, and also serve on the board as Fire District number 1.
That's what I was going to say.
Downtown.
Downtown guys.
Appreciate it. Okay, item number 11, approval to contract CSRS to write RFQ for architectural services for design of new courthouse not to exceed $50,000. Have my name by this, but I'd like to ask Ken Dawson to come up and talk about. Would like to add one note to this, that this needs to be reimbursed from the courthouse bond.
Yes.
Okay.
The purpose of this RFQ is to make sure that we have all the details that are necessary in the building of the courthouse. Of course, we know the complexities and the challenges of doing so. So in order to make sure that everything is captured, and we are working with several different people, judges and whomever, we wanted to make sure that we had an entity that will take that on and basically come up with the actual proposal that would go out for the detailed RFQ to actually get the selection. I wanted to say that we did get some preliminary information from CSRS in doing so, and the basically cost is going not to exceed $45,000 for that service.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve the contract with CSRS to write the RFQ for architectural services, design new not to exceed $45,000 and be reimbursed from the courthouse bond.
Yes, sir.
Motion by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilman Joseph. Any discussion? Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ken. I just have two quick questions. I assume, Ken, we do not have in-house expertise to do this, even though the source of the money is what you said, or what Chairman Dawson said it was. I think we need to be good shepherds of anybody's money to do this, and that's why we're using an engineering firm.
That's exactly, yes.
Okay.
Exactly right.
And number 2, for the record as well, why CSRS as opposed to someone else to assist us with this project?
They've just provided the expertise to be able to do it. They have a lot of experience in this. They're kind of very familiar with all of the codes and everything associated with the parish because they're constantly working with us already. And so, and also just the ability to kind of bridge the gap between the other organizations and things we're doing it was just, thought that they would be the best group to take this thing forward quickly.
Okay, so I lied, or as an old Catholic fibbed.
And they will not be
I have
able
three
to
questions.
bid on anything else, so they're just going to.
Okay, the third question, and actually I think this probably would be better answered by legal counsel, by Mr. Parrington. There's no problem, Mr. Parrington, with just picking because of the low price or whatever?
Below 50,000. It's below 50.
It's the $50,000 threshold. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kluart.
Yeah, I just want to, no matter who does it, this is very important. We've, we started working on this a little over a year ago with the judges and the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office and even looking at the clerk of court's office and everything. So it's a very complex union of a bunch of different facilities and different services coming out of there, and there's been a lot of hard work went into the study of where it came to this far. And we do need an outside service, somebody to take a look at this. So whether it be these guys or somebody else, this is important to do.
Yes. I would like to add to that. I've attended some of the meetings on this and actually visited, Parish President, I visited the courthouse in Livingston. One of the main features here is the security of the new courthouse, so we have to make sure that whoever the architectural firm that does the design is very familiar and experienced in those security features, and so, I mean, we don't want to make sure, we want to make sure that we don't have another courthouse that after 12 or 13 years is not functional. So I agree with you. I think it's very important. Any further discussion? Mr. Lawler?
Yeah, my concern is that, I agree that we need an outside firm to help us with this because I guess we don't have the expertise to do it. But $45,000, that's 5 weeks of work at $200 an hour to write an RFQ. I understand not to exceed, but that there's a potential that this is going to cost $45,000 to write an RFQ. I mean, I think we could do a not to exceed of $10,000, which would be 50 hours of work to write this. And if they need more, they can come back to us. But it just seems like an awful lot of potential dollars for us to spend to write an RFQ. I've never seen us write $45,000 RFQ.
Let me give a little explanation of some of the efforts that they included in the process of trying to get this done. First of all, the RFQ includes a series of meetings and engagement with project stakeholders to understand the vision, the characteristic of the site, breadth and scope of project budget, anticipated constraints and potential timeline, and a complete scope of services that we included in this attachment, which mean phase 1 will be visioning and program definition, site visits, and requests for qualification development. Okay, and I will provide a copy of this detail and send it to everyone because I didn't read the verbiage underneath those bullet points, but it is going to be quite detailed and it's going to require a considerable amount of work. So this is what they propose. Okay.
Councilman Satterley.
Yes, so I find myself fibbing a fourth time, but it's only because of something you said, Mr. Chairman, relative to expertise in writing an RFQ. We've established we don't have it in-house, and we established why the number is what it is and so forth. But you said we need to be careful about a safety issue and so forth. So my question becomes, what, expertise in writing RFQs does this particular firm, CSRS, have in writing RFQs for courthouses? How do we as a council know they or any other name that would have been given tonight has ever wrote an RFQ to look at safety issues and they're therefore the best or most appropriate, even though it's below threshold, et cetera?
Let the other Dawson answer that.
I'm sorry, Ken.
Let me just say that an engineering firm kind of knows the processes and things that they have to go through to make sure they gather the information to answer those detailed questions about safety. That's why I think you saw in this that they had site visits. I mean, they're going to pull information, they're going to pull everything together to make sure that the evaluation is done so that when they get all the information, what everybody wants, and look at the safety concerns, they will be able to develop a professional RFQ to make sure all those things are considered. Everybody knows engineering firms at the process of thought, problem solving, and we felt that this firm definitely has the ability to go through the process to yield a result that would be pleasing to the judges and whoever else pushing this, and that would give us the outcome that we're all looking for.
And Mr. Dawson, I guess that's my point. You're kind of arguing the same, is that any engineering firm is probably capable of doing this and would go through this thought process, et cetera. So again, it still stands, why, as Mr. Lawler said, or as I said, or both of us have said, why CSRS? I mean, we do a lot of business with them, and I'm not saying they're not top drawer. I'm not saying that they don't deserve even another contractor, et cetera. I want to be sure that the public understands tonight that we're just not willy-nilly picking out of, like the rabbit out of the hat, so to speak. CSRS, they're our guy for this. You just said anybody else could have this expertise as well, because it'll be a well-thought-out process.
Sure.
So maybe.
So it's a recommendation from administration that we do this.
Absolutely.
Let's leave it at that.
And another reason I think is that CSRS is very familiar with the situation with the parish. They're very familiar with all our planning codes. They've been working with us for a long time. They have proven, stellar ability to take these type of items and take them to a point that have been pleased with. So there's been some experience that they've worked with the administration and in the parish before that their work has just been stellar. So since there was a timeline established with this and we had to move forward quickly in getting done, it's in the process of less than $50,000, which normally would have been a decision of the parish president to make a decision to select whatever engineering firm that administration or he recommended at the point. We bring in everything to the council so we can go forth. Outside of this, you would have to go through an RFQ process to make the selection.
So we are in no way sending any message to other engineering firms that are not being proposed tonight from the administration that, this is our fair-headed child or anything like that. I mean, like, I see other engineering firm representatives in the audience. I don't know why they're here tonight. They obviously can choose to speak if they want or not, in the public forum.
Whatever you want, Doc. But this company, which we all know is very reputable, if we didn't pick a company we knew like this, we would have to do an RFQ to do that, which would have been 6 weeks.
No, I'm not asking for an RFQ.
And we were under the gun well, I mean, me and Mr. Dawson talked about it. I mean, I didn't just pull them out of the sky. We said, they're already working for us. We're comfortable with them in doing this. And so we talked to them and said, look, if you do this, you won't be able to bid on the project. Okay, well, we understand that. Put together a proposal. So that's where we at. And if we would have had to put an RFQ to get another company, which was 6 weeks, and they're looking at going to bond commission in October, so that's where we at. So do what y'all want.
Okay, I might just add one thing here. I think one of the distinctions, it's been a while since I've worked with them outside of the government work, but the CSRS, they were an architectural firm.
Well, maybe I should have asked the question to the chair, because what I was asking was, and I was told originally that this was an administrative decision. That to me would exclude our chairman, but if he was involved in together talking to you, Mr. President, and so forth, so I think, Ken, you should be able to answer excuse me, got my Dawson's confused. Bill, you should be able to also respond to why CRS and not.
Well, like I said, Schinnever, Sodi, Rodeberg, and CSRS. I can't remember the last one. 3 out of 4 of those were architects. They were primarily an architectural firm, so they have years and years of experience as an architect.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Doing architectural services. So that's why I was comfortable with that myself.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kluot.
Yeah, I just want to express the fact that I welcome the chance. I held CSRS as accountable as anybody on this panel right here. And the quickest way on a major project, this is going to be one of the biggest projects, municipal projects that we've had in this parish for a long time, probably the largest because of the magnitude of the money in our daytime. I welcome the chance because the RFQ is the first place to shoot yourself in the foot, all right? And they have a lot of people to satisfy. They got to satisfy a lot of departments within this parish. So we need a good RFQ, and it will be held to a good RFQ, because that's the loopholes that you hold when you send out a bad RFQ. And that's where you get tied up, because you can be held to those statements within that document. Thank you, sir.
Jim,
Further
like I
discussion.
said, for the record, the last time they did the courthouse over here, we had all kind of issues. And I was in a meeting when they asked the architect what experience they had, the one that they hired. She'd watched LA Law on TV.
Remember?
And that was the qualifications of the architect, and that's why
That's
the
a true
first day we
statement.
held court in there, the lights were burning the judge's head.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Yeah.
In response to Mr. Parrington, that's what I was asking the questions for, to be sure we're not hiring someone that watches too much, was it LA Law or?
LA Law back then.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item number 12, approval of contract with Dwight Poirier for real estate transactions, contract to be less than $50,000. Mr. Perry.
This is just, it's under my name, but we have problems with right-of-way. I am not a title attorney. I cannot write title policies. Mr. Buquois has been doing them through the DA's office, but he is swamped. So we just need a second guy to go to, that's all. All they'll be doing is the transaction on the right-of-way. So moved.
A motion by Councilman Lawler, a second by Councilwoman Casso. Mr. Cluott.
This is not the first time we've had to do this type of stuff, so we have to go outside for some of these type of specialties sometimes.
Further questions, discussion? Opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 13, planning and zoning recommendation, zoning review ID PZ 1331.17-Z for American Homeland LLC, located on the west side of South St. Landry Road, approximately 2,000 feet south of Holly Hill Drive, to request to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from conservation to medium-intensity residential. Zoning Commission recommends approval. This to accept or deny, and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Fournier, is he here tonight? Yes. Okay, thanks. This came before us, and we sent this back to the planning staff for a review of the area. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Staff has looked at the entire area around there, especially as it relates to Edenbourne and how Edenbourne is tying into St. Landry Road. We also had a meeting with the engineer who represented this project, and there's a lot of discussion, and hopefully in the future there's going to be an extension of St. Landry Road connecting Highway 30 all the way down to Highway 22. That's in the works. We're kind of looking at that. This would be a project that's along that corridor. So Planning Commission recommended approval of this particular item, and so I'm available for any questions, as well as the project engineer on this project.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Councilman Turner, second by Councilman Cluott. Discussion, questions? Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, Mr. Jerome, I know we're going from conservations to medium. I know we got industry right there.
That's correct.
Are we still buffered away from industry with the medium residential, that they can build homes right next to the chemical plants?
Yes, there is a big buffer.
There is a big buffer?
The buffer, basically, where you see the chemical plants, they're on heavy industrial use. There's a light industrial use right next to them, which creates a buffer, and then there's another buffer of conservation next to them. So this project itself is right across the street from Lamar Dixon, or I say right across, a little cat-a-corner to it.
Yeah, it's a big step from conservation, it's all the way to medium residential. You're missing out
It
on
is,
rural.
yeah.
And
But we'll be coming back to you with some rezones of that area that's a little bit east of here, along Edenbourne. So we're looking at those projects and those properties as well.
Okay.
Mr. Satterley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jerome. Jerome, is this spot zoning?
Some might consider it, but when you look at the bigger picture in terms of looking at the residential that's coming down, especially as it relates to Riverton, which is south of here along St. Landry Road, if you would extend St. Landry Road all the way from Lamar Dixon going south to Highway 22, We would eventually have residential along that corridor.
But if we don't consider what's coming down and we're just viewing it as what's going on right now, oftentimes I see planning and zoning making decisions on what might be as opposed to what is.
Yeah.
So I guess, and to be fair, I'm reading that you're saying it could possibly be considered under staff recommendations.
That was staff recommendation.
And did not staff also advise the planning commission to, or in this case, the zoning commission, I guess, to deny this rezoning?
That was staff recommendation, correct.
Which is you?
Which is staff, yes.
So?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it spot zoning?
So we basically looked at this in a bigger picture, so that.
Are you saying you rethought it? Staff has rethought it?
We have rethought the situation, yes. So.
And now you're leaning more on the side that it's not spot zoning, or because things may change soon and it definitely won't then?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Lawler.
Is the intent to build a subdivision here? Do we know what the intent
Yes.
is? Yes.
Yes.
And that I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I might add that the subdivision is somewhat limited because there's a lot of wetlands on the site itself, so they're very limited in what they can do with the property. So any kind of a development on the property will have to consider some of the wetlands on the site. So they're limited in what they can do, and especially in terms of the number of units that they can put on the site. Right.
My concern is this traffic would generally then go to Highway 30 in St. Landry, which is an intersection that has no red light, just a stop sign. There's already huge traffic problems there.
Yeah.
And if there's a event at one of the plants, how are these people going to get out of the area?
Well, remember that this is going to connect, it's right south of the connection with Edenborn. So this will be connected on St. Landry Road, right south of where Edenborn's tying into St. Landry Road. Okay, so they could exit Edenborn, go to Highway 44, and end up at that traffic circle that will be built there. Right, so that is another exit point in order to get to the interstate. Right. But correct, the traffic could go north to 30 and basically turn right there, or unless they're going to LSU football game, and then they could turn left. So.
Todd Lambert, Councilman Todd Lambert.
Is this connecting to our new road that we?
No, it's not connecting to Edenborn, but it's right south of Edenborn.
Okay.
Yeah.
The road is already established, the main road coming in to this?
St. Landry Road is, yes.
Councilman Satterley.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Again, thank you, Jerome. I wanted to record, this is not in my District 4, at least I don't recognize the area. Which district? Okay.
It's in Councilman Turner's district.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept, a motion and a second to accept. Is there further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 14, introduction of ordinance to relocate voting precinct 33 from Santa Mo Middle School back to its original location of Santa Mo Primary School.
Motion to introduce, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any opposition? Motion's introduced. Item number 15, introduction of ordinance to add section 2-83, existing professional services contract to Chapter 2, Article 5, Division 2 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances.
Motion to introduce.
A motion by Councilman Todd Lambert to introduce. Second by Councilwoman Casso. Discussion, opposition. Ordinance is introduced. Item number 16, introduction of ordinance to revoke an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across the middle of Lot B-1 of the Joseph E. Bro property.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Councilman Kluad, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any opposition? Ordinance is introduced. Item 17, introduction of ordinance to amend section 17-4092, appeal hearing procedure to Appendix 4, subdivision regulations of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code.
Move to introduce.
Motion by Councilman Todd Lambert to introduce.
Second.
Second by Councilman Joseph. Any discussion, any opposition? Ordinance is introduced. Item number 18, introduction of ordinance to amend Ascension Parish Louisiana Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Occupational Licenses, Taxes, and Regulations, Article 1, in general, to revoke Section 13-7 film permit.
Motion introduced.
Motion by Councilman Benny Johnson, second by Councilwoman Castro. Motion opposition. Ordinance is introduced. Public hearings, reading of ordinance, item number 19, to revoke an existing 15-foot servitude located across the southern property line of lots 37-A, 37-B, and 37-C of the William E. Brooks property.
To revoke an existing 15-foot servitude located across the southern property line of lots 37A, 37B, 37C of the William E. Brooks property. Property is depicted on the improvement survey of servitude revocation plat map by James Falgoop, registered professional land surveyor, Earls and Associates LLC, July 24, 2017, and recorded as instrument number 929130. Whereas the petition is a petition of the Ascension Parish Council to revoke an existing 15-foot servitude on lots 37A, 37B, and 37C of the William E. Brooks property. Property is depicted on the improvement survey for servitude revocation plat map by James W. Falgout, registered land surveyor, Earls and Associates LLC, dated July 24, 2017, and recorded as instrument number 929130. Whereas the Planning Department, Engineering Department, and all relevant utility companies have reviewed and researched said request and have no objection to the revocation and relocation, the Parish of Ascension hereby ordains that it grants approval of the revocation of the existing 15-foot servitude located across the southern property line of lots 37A, 37B, and 37C of the William E. Brooks property. Property is depicted on the improvement survey for servitude revocation plat by James Falgout, registered land surveyor, Earls and Associates LLC, dated July 24, 2017, recorded as instrument number 929130, attached hereto and made a part hereof as Exhibit A, to repeal all ordinances in conflict herewith or hereby and henceforth repealed. In any provision the ordinance is held invalid, such invalidity should not affect other provisions herein, which shall be given effect without the invalid provisions, and to this effect, and the provisions of the ordinance are hereby declared severable. This ordinance shall be effective 15 days after adoption. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Public hearing.
Motion to move.
Motion by Councilman Cagnolati, second by Councilman Lambert.
Motion to close?
Motion by Councilman Cagnolati, second by Councilman Lawler to close the public hearing. Item number 21, the ordinance to revoke an existing 15-foot servitude located across. Got a motion by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any objections? Any discussion? Ordinance is adopted. Item number 22, reading of ordinance, ordering and calling a special election to be held in the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, on November 18, 2017, to authorize the amendment of Article 5, Section 5-04C2 of the Home Rule Charter for the Parish of Ascension to change the voting requirements from 2/3 vote of the governing authority to 2/3 vote of the governing authority members present at the vote of the employee appeal, to be effective January 1, 2018, making application to the State Bond Commission and providing for other matters connected therewith.
Following the ordinance, which was previously introduced in a written form at a regular meeting of the Parish Council on August 17, 2017, the notice of public hearing having been published in the official journal, which public hearing was held in accordance with the public notice was offered. An ordinance ordering calling a special election to be held in the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, on November 18, 2017, to authorize the amendment of the Article 5, Section 5-04C2 of the Home Rule Charter for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, to change the voting requirements from 2/3 vote of the governing authority to 2/3 vote of the governing authority members present at the vote of the employee's appeal, to be effective on January 1, 2018, making application to the State Bond Commission and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Whereas the Parish Council of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, acting as governing authority in the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, hereby desires to call a special election to be held in the parish on November 18, 2017, to authorize the amendment of Article 5, Section 5-04C2 of the Home Rule Charter for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, to change the voting requirements from 2/3 of the voting of the governing authority to 2/3 of the governing authority members present at the vote of the employee's appeal. Such change to be effective on January 1, 2018. Now therefore be it ordained by the governing authority that 1, Section 1, election call, subject to the approval of the State Bond Commission and under authority conferred by Article 6, Section 5C of the Constitution of the State of Louisiana of 1974 as amended the Constitution, Article 6, Section 9-03 of the Charter, and after provisions of Chapter 6 of Title 18 Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended, the election code and other constitutional and statutory authority, a special election be and is hereby called in order to be held in the parish Saturday, November 18, 2017, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. in compliance with provisions of Section 541 of Title 18 Louisiana Revised Statutes 1950 as amended LARS 19541, and that the election there shall be submitted to all registered voters residing in the parish qualified and entitled to vote in said election under the Constitution and laws of the State of Louisiana and the Constitution of the United States, and the following proposition to wit: shall Article 5, Section 504C2, Human Resources Department of the Home Rule Charter of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, pertaining to the process of hearing appeals on the decisions of Personnel Board of Review, amended to read: after any hearing, the Review Board shall submit the advisory recommendation to the Parish President. The decision by the President of these matters shall be final unless overruled by 2/3 majority of the governing authority members present at the vote of the employee's appeal. Publication of the notice of special election pursuant to LARS 18-1285, the notice of special election committee election shall be published in the Gonzales Weekly Citizen newspaper of general circulation in the parish and is the official journal of the parish once a week for 4 consecutive weeks, with the first publication to be made not less than 45 days, no more than 90 days prior to the date fixed for the election, which notice will be substantially in accordance with the notice of special election annexed hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference to the same extent as if it was set forth in full. Section 3, Canvass of Election Returns. The governing authority will meet on the Thursday, December 7, 2017 at 6 p.m. in the Donaldsonville Courthouse, 300 Homer Street, 2nd floor, Donaldsonville, Louisiana, and shall then, in their open and in public session, proceed to examine and canvass the official returns and declare the results of said election pursuant to Section 1292 of Title 18 Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended. Section 4, Polling Places Commissions. The polling places set forth in the attached notice of special election and situated within the boundaries of the parish B and the same are hereby designated as polling places to which to hold said election in accordance with Section 1286A or Section 1286-1, as the case may be, of Title 18 Louisiana Revised Statutes 1950 as amended, and the commissioners in charge and commissioners respectively will be those persons designated according to law in accordance with Section 1286A or Section 1286.1, as the case may be, of Title 18 Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended. Section 5, Designation of Commissioners and Commissioners in Charge. As required by LARS 1286B, the officers designated to serve in the commissioners in charge and commissioners pursuant to Section 4 hereof will hold the election as herein provided solely in compliance with provisions of Parts 2 and 5 of the Election Code as amended, and will make due returns of said election in accordance with the aforesaid provisions of the Election Code. The compensation of said officers be and the same is hereby fixed at the sum prescribed by law. All registered voters in the precinct and reside in the parish are entitled to vote in the election. Section 6, Authorization of the Chairman. The Chairman of the governing authority be and is hereby empowered, authorized, and directed to arrange for and furnish election officers in ample time of the holding of the elections, all equipment, forms, and other items which may be required to hold said election. The Chairman of the governing authority is further authorized, empowered, and directed to take any and further actions required by state or federal law to arrange the election. Section 7, Furnish election call. In accordance with LARS 18-1285B1, certified copies of the ordinance shall be forwarded to the Secretary of State, Commissioner of Elections, Clerk of Court, and ex officio parish custodian of voting machines in and for the Parish of Ascension, and the Registrar of Voters in and for the parish as notification of the election hearing called, in order that each may prepare for said election and perform the respective functions if required by law. Section 8, Application to the State Bond Commission. Application B and C hereby formally authorized to make the State Bond Commission for consent authority to hold said for said election as herein required, and that a certified copy of this ordinance shall be forwarded to the State Bond Commission on behalf of the governing authority together with the letter requesting the prompt consideration and approval of application. Publication. In accordance with Article 6, Section 602C2 of the Charter, the ordinance was published in full in Gonzales Weekly, a newspaper of general circulation of the parish, which is the official journal of the parish prior to adoption. Implementation of the Charter Amendments. If favorably approved by the voters, the Charter Amendment shall be effective and will be implemented without further action of the governing authority on January 1, 2018. The chairman and the secretary of the governing authority are hereby authorized and instructed to take any action as may be required to implement said amendments. The ordinance shall become effective immediately upon adoption. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Open a public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing, Councilman Satterley, second by Councilman Cagnolati.
Motion to close.
Got a motion by Councilman Satterley to close the public hearing, second by Councilman Todd Lambert.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
opportunity?
it is my pleasure to make the motion to move this ordinance.
We have a motion by Councilman Satterley to move the ordinance, second by Councilman Lawler. Any discussion? Any opposition?
You need a two-thirds vote.
Two-thirds. Roll call.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Turner. Councilman Satterley.
Yes.
Councilman Kluot.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Dawson.
Yes. Ordinance is adopted. Item number 25, reading of ordinance purchase of property by Fire District Number 1 from Amy Gotro. Mr. Parrington.
To acquire parcel of removal property for the parish of Ascension, for Ascension Parish Government for the price of $200,000 for the purpose of fire protection, be it ordained the Ascension Parish Governing Authority hereby authorizes the purchase of said property situated in the parish of Ascension more fully described as a certain tract of parcel of ground together with all buildings, improvements thereon situated and thereunto belonging, situated in section 17T, Township 9 South, Range 3 East, Ascension Parish, and being more particularly described as tract 4B on plan survey by J.P. Earls III, PLS, dated June 23, 1993, attached to the act of declaration and deposit recorded in instrument number 430191 of the Ascension Parish record, said tract 4B containing 1.93 acres and having those dimensions and boundaries and being subject to those servitudes and rights of ways as shown on the fully described on the map. The ordinance is being adopted in conformity with section 601 of the Ascension Parish Charter. The purchase of the property is subject to approval by the parish attorney and contingent upon seller being able to deliver merchantable title. Kenny Matassa, parish president, is authorized to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the parish. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Public hearing.
Motion.
A motion by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilman Satterley.
Motion to close.
A motion by Councilman Joseph, second by Councilman Johnson. Close the public hearing.
Move the motion.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Kluot, second by Councilman Johnson to move the ordinance. Any discussion, any opposition? Ordinance is adopted. Item number 28, reading of ordinance, temporary ordinances suspending Unified Land Development Code, Section 17-507, and temporarily amending said field requirement. Mr. Parrington.
Temporary ordinance suspending Unified Land Development Code, Section 17-507, and temporarily amending said field requirement. Whereas Ascension Parish local government subdivision is defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution, 1974. Whereas the parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body of land use in the parish. Whereas Section 17-507, Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, governing the placement of fill on properties in the parish. Whereas due to the flood of 2016, the Ascension Parish Council has instigated a process developing a comprehensive floodplain management plan and is currently unknown whether it will be advisable to use fill in Ascension Parish. Now therefore be it ordained that the use of greater than 1 foot, 12 inches of fill, regardless of the source, for the purpose of elevating or the elevation of land is prohibited in the areas of the parish that are currently classified as flood zones A and E. The temporary amendment shall not apply to the raising or reconstruction of any dwelling or commercial structure that was flooded as a result of 2016 flood. The temporary amendment shall not apply to any residential or commercial development which has had construction plans approved prior to the date of introduction of this temporary amendment. This temporary amendment shall expire upon the adoption of a comprehensive floodplain management plan or 3 months, whichever is least. In the event any portion of the ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Public hearing.
Motion open.
We have a motion by Councilman Lawless, second by Councilman Joseph. Open the public hearing. We do have a speaker. Have Carter Lambert. Save those till tomorrow. Have 3 minutes, Mr. Lambert.
All right, my name is Carter Lambert. I wanted to make sure that this actually made sense, because what it says is no fill should be added for a floodplain, which the definition of a floodplain is where the river affects the flood. So drainage, I'm sure it's all a scare because of 2016's incident, but a lot of this property is next to canals, next to rivers, a bunch of riverfront property, a lot of high-end real estate, and many people have a lot of money invested in their land and haven't quite built their houses yet. Driveways, does this include to build a driveway to your house? Because if you want to bring it up to where these minor floods don't affect it, you'd want to build it up a little higher. I'm just not understanding exactly how this will benefit the landowners or how it will benefit drainage. Any
So it's really
answers?
public comment, it's not questions.
Oh, okay,
Mr.
all
Lambert.
right. Well, my personal issue is I have 6 acres that's located on Amite River that I've been working on for about 5 years. I'm not some multi-millionaire that could just dump a bunch of money and get it taken care of, but I haven't completed the driveway, which I have permits from the Corps of Engineers, DNR, Wildlife and Fisheries, state land, state waterways, all of them. And from my understanding, this will negate that. And I'm not aware of any engineer that actually came up with this plan, because it really makes no sense. Well, with adding dirt, it doesn't take away from, it actually brings more water out of the river, because dirt wicks up like anything else. Dirt and water weigh more than plain water, because it brings it up. It's not going to affect it much, because if you say there's 10,000 loads of dirt, it's going to bring the river, it's not even going to phase it, but it's not going to make it any worse either. And I don't understand where this came through, what the purpose is. And I think more research should be done. Maybe someone who knows about hydrology and everything should look at it. That's pretty much my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you.
Have another opposition, Mr. Derek Murphy. You want to do that now?
Hello, Council, Mr. Chairman. My name is Derek Murphy. I'm here to speak against this because of several reasons, but one I just heard tonight was about it doesn't get locked in until construction plans are approved. So if there are projects out there with multiple phases that's been approved on a preliminary plat standpoint, or construction plans are in the review, or just multitude of things. People went and bought property, millions of dollars in property based on preliminary plats that were approved at some time. And now that used to be the mechanism. When your preliminary plat gets approved, that's the mechanism that locks that development plan in place. And now, with construction plans being the mechanism, you've just taken everything out of commerce that, or if they bought the property, they can no longer use the property that they actually own. So that's definitely an issue with this. The 12 inches is pretty, I guess, arbitrary, in my opinion. It's pretty little. You can barely get a house if you're using a 2x12 or something like that. You can get maybe up to 2 feet, depending on what you're doing. The other thing is the code right now. You got to have a curb and gutter type street. The curb and gutter, as the code sits, has to be 1 foot above or 1 foot below base flood. So if you can't build the property up, you can't drain to the road, which is what's supposed to handle the drainage with the way the ordinances are all written today. So your house, if you can't bring in any fill, you can't even bring in a road or build anything on the road. Previously, when y'all were looking at this, at least y'all left the road alone where you can at least bring in the road. So what happens is, in effect, you can't do any type of construction whatsoever, and that's what this is doing. It's basically putting a moratorium on anything in A and AE in that area. The other thing, you can have 100 acres, and you could want to put a single home on here. Well, with this particular ordinance in place, that person, if he's 2 foot below the base flood, he's done. It doesn't matter if he's got 1 home or 10 homes or whatever he has. It doesn't matter if he's been owning that property for years or his family's been owning it for generations. He cannot put a slab on grade. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, he can build a pier on beam, and I understand that. But he cannot put a slab on grade with this in effect. So just ask tonight to not approve this, and for the people of Ascension. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Joe G. Moore.
Joe Moore, 11859 River Highlands Drive, Santa Monica, Louisiana. I'm here again tonight on behalf of the Capital Region Area Builders, the Greater Baton Rouge Board of Realtors, the Ascension Council of Realtors, and homeowners in River Highlands Estates. We are all opposed to this ordinance because, again, we do feel it's arbitrary. The 12 inches does not make any sense. There's been no studies to prove that this is a good ordinance or has any bearing anywhere else in Louisiana. Last time I was here, I mentioned that St. Tammany and Tangipahoa Parish have detailed studies and ordinances on the floodplain management to address this issue, and I advise that the council table this ordinance and not adopt it tonight until they have time to consult with those 2 parishes and their floodplain management bodies to come up with a sound ordinance that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. So, seeing no further public comment, a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Mr.
Motion by Councilwoman Castle, second by Councilman Joseph, and we'll recognize Councilwoman Castle.
Yeah, at this time, Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse upon advice of legal counsel.
Okay. Councilwoman Castle is recusing herself. Councilman Kluot.
Yeah, I don't want to recuse. I'm good. I'm up for the fight. I'm gonna just tell you that, hey, while I applaud my fellow council members that are trying to come do something here, in District 6 in Santa Monica, it's horrendous what happened, and in other parts of the parish also. But I'm leery on just throwing the gauntlet down on one thing. We have on retainer a firm that's going to review our floodplain management, and I know we want to put some things on hold. My main concern right now for my residents, because I represent the person that's building up their land, and I also represent the person that water's draining to, okay? That's what we do in public. We represent everybody that's in the area, okay? I want some floodplain management, some ordinances, some regulations, that whatever you want to do, that you got to come forward and permit. I have at least 3 or 4 places where people have built up their land unpermitted. We have no binding rules, laws that we can really sink our teeth into to help the neighbors that are being flooded. And some of the people that are building up, they're doing it out of fear, okay? They're not mad at anybody. They're just trying to get up and get away from the water, okay? But we don't have anything. Long before the August 2016 flood, I have one place that I'm trying to work with the administration and the different department heads with the regulations we have in place right now, where someone built up acres and acres of land. And it's causing some harm to his neighbors. And there's nothing we can do about it. So, you know, while I got to live with that and work with each individual to try to help them, I'm definitely not in favor of this here tonight, this particular ordinance that's in front of us. I spoke at the Strategic Planning Committee meeting when it came up several months ago. And once again, I applaud the person that brought it up. He's trying to hold something off, and we're really putting pressure on the administration. We want some answers back pretty quick on some good regulations that can come forward to us, things that we can work with our constituents and work with. But this thing here tonight is not acceptable for me or to the people that I represent based on the fact that can't nobody throw dirt on the ground. You can't put a trailer pad, but, you know, I don't know. It's bad.
Was there a motion in there, Councilman? Was there a motion?
I'm not making any motion.
Okay. Discussion. Councilman Todd Lambert.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Mr. Ken up. I think he may have spoke with Bill earlier about on a timeline with the firm that we have to come to bring the contract,
Yes.
master plan on the floodplain, how we're gonna manage it. I think it's critical on how quick that's coming to us, whether or not we even need to move on this tonight.
Sure. I talked with Mr. Rue regarding this. We couldn't make it tonight regarding the floodplain management and that process we're moving forward with. The goal was to get answers back to this council as quickly as possible. So he assured me that we're looking at 60 to 90 days to come up with some recommendations that can be considered about how we move forward. Now, to actually implement it takes a bunch of ordinances, changes, and that kind of thing. To get all of that done, you may be looking at 6 months to a year before the ordinance are written and they're put in place and go through the process. But he said that we understand from an administration standpoint as well as from Mr. Rue, who's over our drainage department, that this is an item that we wanted to get information back quickly. So 60 to 90 days is when we plan on having some information, some technical information back to this body for consideration.
Councilman Lawler.
60 to 90 days, and that is, no questions. Councilman Cord, I was the one that brought this up, you have to hide that, use my name. I'm not ashamed of it. First of all, I'm not trying to stop construction right now with this, and, from what I heard from some of the testimony before, it sounds like people think this is a permanent thing. This is a 3-month plan to give us time, 60 to 90 days, 3 months, to give us time to see what we should be doing. If we can get something back that says, hey, these are the areas where fill is not an issue, this is an area where you're making a big mistake. If something's done, as Phil is putting here, then we should wait 90 days and make sure that we're not making a big mistake, because once you put the fill in, there's no taking it out. And errors can be made. We can delay people. That doesn't mean people can't build later on. The problem is if we do something that can't be rectified later on. We can't have people tearing up their slabs and digging all their dirt out. That's what this is about. Now, I know there's been some misinformation or miscommunication that if you're outside of zones A and E, that if you dig a pond, you can't use that fill to build up 3 feet. Absolutely you can, because the ordinance doesn't apply to people that are not in flood zones A and E. So if you're digging a pond and you want to build your land up, that's fine. This is simply asking for time to make sure that we're making the right decision and not making an error that cannot be fixed later on. I'll leave it at that, though. And I'll make a motion that we accept that we move this.
Move the ordinance. Have a motion by Councilman Lawler to move the ordinance. Councilman Saturday, who's second?
I'd like to make a comment, and perhaps I will.
Okay.
Concern is I support Mr. Lawler's intention here, and I do believe once the fill in, the argument of fill out is too late. I believe we need to take a deep breath in this parish, and yes, there's no doubt that this was precipitated largely because of the, quote, great flood of August 2016. But I just offer, so what? Whatever the etiology is, if we got a problem, I think it's our duty and responsibility to address it. My bigger concern is that it, frankly, is only for 3 months. So I want the point of clarity before deciding to second and get further discussion or offer a, quote, friendly amendment, or there's no such thing, but an amended motion. Is 3 months enough time? Now, I see it says, and I want to talk about this last time, but, we as a council do not talk at things during introduction. We talk at them when it gets down to passing an ordinance or not, but it says flood management plan or floodplain management plan. And we had talked about timelines with the engineering firms and Mr. Rue, who's not here tonight, about floodplain, comprehensive floodplain management plans have to result in if to be meaningful at all after you do the study, a floodplain management ordinance. So we have an FPMP and an FPMO. And that ordinance, we were told, would take a lot longer than the 60 to 90 days that I'm hearing about this evening. So, I mean, to me, this doesn't have any teeth at all for 3 months, other than saying you can't do more than a foot for 3 months, because it says, and I'm going to read the line, the temporary amendment, that's a key thing here tonight. No one's even talking about this. They're acting like this is it once this is in vogue. Shall expire, so it goes away upon adoption of a comprehensive floodplain management plan, which I think should say floodplain management ordinance, or it says 3 months, whichever is least. Well, I tell you what, I've talked to the engineering agencies involved as late as today, earlier today, when we had a pre-app meeting on another issue in my district, unrelated, and I've been given every indication, and they're here tonight, can come forward and disagree, and we can call each other speakers of non-truths, that there's no way we're going to have an FMPO in 3 months. I can see by my colleagues nodding heads down the line that, yeah, that this thing's going to probably go 6 months at all. So if all we can get is at least 3 months, I do support that, Mr. Chairman, but I'd rather see it, frankly, 6 months. And what I'd like to see is another one of my colleagues make the second to at least continue this discussion on that item and anything else that we need to talk about.
So let me get a clarification. Are you seconding Mr. Lawler's motion, or are you offering a amended motion?
Well, I can go either way, because if I second it, I can still offer an amended motion.
So you have to pick one of them for right now.
Well, I'll second Mr. Lawler's motion.
Okay, so we have a second.
More discussion.
Now, any further discussion? Mr. Joseph.
I would like to make a substitute motion that we table this item till we get that report back.
We have a motion by Councilman Joseph, and where was the second? Councilman Todd Lambert. So we're now on a substitute motion to table the ordinance until
we get the report back.
Floodplain management report.
Report back, right. Study, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, discussion on this. Okay, hearing no further.
Mr. Chairman, may I now offer a substitute motion to the substitute motion?
I think you're allowed two.
Correct.
All right.
Therefore, I may. You have
may.
to give me permission.
You may.
Thank you, sir. I would like to not table it. I would like to use the elements of Mr. Lawler's original authored ordinance read by Mr. Parrington, but change the language to say to adoption of a comprehensive floodplain management ordinance, striking the word plan, or striking the word 3, both in text and in parentheses numerically, and replacing that with 6, S-I-X, and the number 6 in parentheses, months, whichever is least.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion that amends the original motion that calls for, changes the language to adoption of floodplain management plan or 6 months.
May I make a statement of discussion?
Councilman Lawler.
I will second that, but there was a reason I had selected 3 months. It was also to put some pressure on HNTB to move this along quickly, since it had been delayed by almost a year now, or getting close to a year from when we thought it was moving forward. That was the basis for the 3 months, to add pressure to make sure that the floodplain management plan came into effect. The goal of this is not to have a 3-month prohibition on using fill. The goal of this is to get a comprehensive floodplain management plan in place. And if this was a way to speed that along, that's why I had said 3 months, but I will second the 6 months.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the substitute motion. Further discussion? Okay, so any opposition to the substitute motion?
Yes.
Okay, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes. I mean, whoa. Well, I caught myself. Hold on. No to this motion.
Councilman Turner.
No.
Councilman Satterley.
Yes.
Councilman Kluot.
No.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Not voting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Lambert.
No.
Councilman Cagnolati.
No.
Councilman Johnson.
No.
Chairman Dawson.
No. That motion fails. Now we revert to the previous motion, which was to table this ordinance until we receive a floodplain management plan. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Discussion on that. Okay, opposition to that. Have opposition, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Satterly.
No.
Councilman Kluot.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
No.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Dawson.
Yes. So that motion carries. Okay, takes care of item number 30.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just as a point of order, that motion was out of order that we voted on. We're not tabling anything. The table means we would discuss it later on in this, so I assume this is a motion to defer it until we now
Postpone or defer, we'll take that clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, item number 31, executive session.
Motion.
A motion by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Joseph. Any opposition?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Satterly.
Yes.
Councilman Kluot.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Dawson.
Yes.
reconvene, Mr.
I had a
Chairman.
motion to come out of executive session by Councilman Todd Lambert, second by Councilman Cagnalotti. Any opposition? Now, out of executive session. Item number 32, East Lane appeal. And we will first entertain a motion to go in to convene as the Planning Commission appeals.
So moved.
Our motion by Councilman Law.
What about the motion?
Oh, wait,
No, we
I'm
got to go
sorry.
through.
I'm
come
sorry.
back. We
We
got
had
to
a
come
motion.
back. We have to come back.
A little bit early.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the.
To reconvene.
We'll reconvene. We have already reconvened.
All right. Okay.
Are you
All
going to
right.
make a motion?
I'm gonna make the motion, yeah. Based on this subject item that we've been discussing for the last couple of months, from our legal counsel, our second legal counsel, independent legal counsel, we've been advised to take no action on this item.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
That's a motion to take no action. Okay? There's a second by Councilman Satterley. Any discussion? Any opposition? Okay. Now we go, a motion to convene as the Planning Commission appeals.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Kluart, second by Councilman Satterley. The opposition, Councilwoman Casso.
Yes, Mr. Dawson, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I have been speaking with legal counsel. I share his concerns about the process that got us to this place.
I think I'm going to have to hear the public comment.
Oh,
That's okay. So can we go to public comment on item number 32, Reese Lane appeal? And we have several commenters. So first tonight, Catherine Schultz. She's not, I'm sorry, you're correct. Melanie Hall.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Hall. I'm a resident of Parker Place Estates, and we, at the June Planning Commission meeting, we all voiced our opinions to oppose Reese Lane for many reasons. I know the Planning Commission said that our concerns about the school in this district, Prairieville Primary, it's full to capacity, and more neighborhoods on top of neighborhoods will just further make that a problem. But the Planning Commissioner member said that y'all don't really look at the schools as being an issue, but I feel like it needs to be addressed. The school's not even, 10 years old, and the entire 5th grade is in T buildings. They're talking about bringing in more T buildings for kindergarten, for 1st grade. My son is in 3rd grade, and his class has taken over the computer lab because they ran out of room. So it's definitely an issue. It also creates a traffic issue, which at the Planning Commission meeting they did a traffic study, and yes, the study itself, which was a very small pinpoint of time it was done, it was not during time to go to work, time to come home, time to go to school, school dismissal, so there was none of the actual traffic concerns that we have in that area visible on that traffic study report. Furthermore, with the traffic, there's supposed to be a roundabout put in at Parker Road and Bro, and that's only going to further increase the traffic flow we have. The high school's going to be built on that corner. Again, we're just adding more and more cars and people, and it needs to be something that we look at. As development's great, I'm not, obviously that I live in a new subdivision, I'm not against building new things, but we need to stop putting more water into the bowl when it's full, and I think that's kind of where we're at. Speaking of water, drainage is an issue throughout the parish. And when we get any substantial rain, we have water that backs up. Luckily, no one has flooded in their homes, but it's come scarily close. And the plans for Reese have it as at a 18-foot elevation, whereas we are at 16 feet. So my home backs up to this property, and if it's going to be 2 feet higher, I'm not really convinced that I'm not going to get more water than I am currently. And I can see it every time we get 6-hour, 8-hour rain. I don't need 2 feet more draining back into my backyard.
I think that's your timer. You'll have to.
Is that my time?
Is that correct? Yeah, that's your time.
Okay. So
You
basically,
take one sentence and sum up maybe if you want.
we're full, and I think we can take some time, like y'all have talked about earlier in this other meetings, and maybe just postpone things, check all the numbers before we just go ahead and put more people where we're already at capacity.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
We have a green card, Mr. Marty Burat. Familiar sounding name.
How y'all doing? Some of y'all know me, some of y'all don't. I'm definitely not no speaker, but I'm here to speak about that property. 30 years ago, my daddy bought that property. With no sign up there that said he couldn't sell it when he wanted to. But he didn't want to sell it. Wanted to put cows there. Cleaned it up, put a fence around it, put cows there. There's cows on that place today, right now. He's been dead about 1.5 years. Him and my mama wanted to give the place to my nephews. My brother lived on the place. He's dead too. They wanted to give the place to my nephews. I said, hey, that's a good idea. My nephews, one of them's building a house, one of them got 2 kids, costing them a lot of money. They don't want to live there. They don't have the equipment to take care of it. They don't have horses. They don't have cows. So they asked me to sell it. So that's what I did. Got in touch with some people. I didn't have to get in touch with people. They got in touch with me. Come to me to buy it. Went through about 7 people, finally found the right people, and everything that those people said they was going to do, they did it. Wouldn't no talk behind nobody's back, didn't do nothing. They come to y'all, ask to do this. My daddy, he probably wouldn't ask y'all if he could do this. He probably would have just done it. But that's not the case anymore. So, like I said, I don't see what the problem is with him giving them that property and them selling it, because, like I said, they don't want to pay taxes on it. I know I pay a lot of taxes. And on my taxes, it says drainage, it says fire, it says libraries. I pay it because I want my property. Don't want to sell it. A lot of people ask me to buy my property, but I don't want to sell it. It's nothing to do with that. Like I said, I think that they made a rash decision the first time to kind of turn this thing down. And there was people come up here and said that it was going to flood them. This place didn't flood. Didn't have no more water than what you could have cut grass out there the day it flooded. So I don't see where that's a big issue, considering that this place has a subdivision behind it. It has a subdivision on the side of it. It has a subdivision in front of it. And to the right, there's a developer that bought that to put another subdivision. So I don't see where it's out of the ordinary for this subdivision to be there. And like I said, I guess I should have wrote some notes down. I'm getting kind of dragged down here. But like I said, I think that denying these boys to do what they want with their property, I don't think that's right. I think that's what they do in other countries. You buy something, you're supposed to be able to do what you want with it. Now, they ain't doing nothing to hurt nobody. And then, like I said, the subdivision's going to be there. And if y'all was to deny this, y'all going to be stopping, I see y'all here, y'all going to be stopping people from their businesses, because all this does is create jobs. This is just progress, you know. It ain't like it's ruining the world right there. It's creating jobs. If you deny this, they're going to go to Livingston. They're going to buy a place over there. They're going to develop. The people from Livingston, they're going to drive through your parish and go get your jobs. and they would like to live here, but you wouldn't let them. So you might want to think about some of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremiah Hall.
Good evening. So first, let me start off. I'm not from this parish. I moved here from New Orleans. I started over 20-something years ago going to that National Guard unit there in Gonzales. Came up here every month. Loved the area. Loved it. Made a bunch of friends up here. Decided this is exactly where I want to raise my family. That was before I found out that there were great schools and that the parish was just amazing outside of just a little bit of Gonzales that I had seen. All right, so I packed up, my wife and I, we moved here, we started a family, 2 little kids. They've been running around all night. We love it here. I built this house in Parker Place. I put everything I've got into it. And I've been there a little over 2 years, and I've seen water come up pretty close to my house. Sometimes within about 3 feet of my slab. And my house backs up to the property that we're talking about, and the reason why I don't get water is because of how low that property is. The wetlands and all of that's right there. It holds that water and it helps it run off. And I get that, there's things that are said are going to be put in place to help this whenever they build the new subdivision, but I can't see anything that they would put in place, whether it's a retention pond, a detention pond, whatever you call it, that could take that amount of water to keep it from coming up any further on my property. Okay? It's everything I have. And it scares me. After the planning meeting that we went to, I went back and I watched past videos of the planning meetings where Parker Place was discussed, even Brookstone, and there was a consistent thing that from the parish engineer during those meetings that there were miscalculations coming from the very first Shadows of Ascension, the first one right there on the corner. She brought it up during those meetings, said that actually asked that the engineers work with the original engineer to correct those miscalculations before moving forward. And then whatever happened with Brookstone and that whole appeal thing happened, but nothing has changed where I'm at. The watershed hasn't changed, the drainage hasn't changed, the ditches haven't, nothing has changed. So to me, we're all still working off the bad drainage plan, and I think that needs to be addressed before we do anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. James Myers.
Good evening. I live in Parker Place Estates on Parker Place Drive. Actually, I live next door to Jeremiah and Melanie. Kind of reiterating what they said, we moved in February of 2015, moved from Lafourche Parish up here. And not even a month after we moved into our house, we had a pretty strong thunderstorm come through. And the water came up several feet into our yard. Just a normal rainstorm. Water came up. I don't see how putting a subdivision behind us. I don't technically back up to Reese Lane, but I'm downstream from where the water is going to flow. I think building another subdivision back there is a bad idea. I know they say they've got their drainage studies and everything, but like Jeremiah just brought up, I think the drainage studies are flawed from the original drainage study from Shadows of Ascension, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. So I would ask the council to uphold the denial from the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alex Lopez.
Good evening. My name's Alex Lopez. I live on Fenway Avenue in Parker Place. We have concerns. We moved in from another state. I'm from here originally, wanted to bring my family back. So we took our time to find a neighborhood with a quiet street. No issues that my friends had encountered in 2016 with the drainage and the flood. Since being in there since May, we're pretty new. We've seen water come up to our back fence. We've seen, heard our neighbors talk about drainage issues and have some concerns about that. Another concern is the connecting street. They're proposing to connect this neighborhood to ours, which would turn our quiet street for our two small children into a cut-through, if you would, because there is already a lot of issues with the traffic on Bro Road and Parker. So if they're letting out a school, people are going to cut through our neighborhood to get into that new neighborhood and create a lot of additional traffic. And there's a lot of kids in our neighborhood. Everybody in our neighborhood gets along really good, you know, goes real slow, watches out for the kids because they do play out there. Some other things to consider is the school itself on the corner. I know people keep bringing it up, and at the last meeting it was told that, you know, that's something they couldn't consider, but they had a meeting a couple weeks ago at the school, and there was so many people attending the meeting that it overflowed out of the parking lot of the school, both sides of Parker Road, and into our neighborhood where people had trouble getting in and out of our neighborhood. It reduced Parker to a one-lane road. They had that much traffic and that many cars. So that's a concern, us trying to pull out onto Parker if we have to go somewhere. You know, you're adding a new neighborhood, you're adding a ton of people, and the infrastructure just can't handle it out there. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Joel Drago.
Thank you. I'm here to represent Quail Creek subdivision, which is just adjacent to the proposed subdivision. And, you know, like everybody else, I've got the same concerns, same issues. I moved to Quail Creek 11 years ago, and 2 months after I moved in, we had a hard rain, and I was driving home, and I went to the side entrance, and it looked like it was pretty high water, so I said, I'm gonna go into the main entrance. I know that'll be higher. I pulled in there, lost the car. You know, it was a foot of water. I didn't realize that. Make things worse, it was my boss's car. But we're moving on. Anyway, the point is, you know, we're not against development. I mean, obviously that's why we're in a house. But the concern is overdevelopment. You know, just to the north of us, we have another subdivision that's in the process of being built, Iron Creek. And between us and Iron Creek is another smaller subdivision, Hunter's Trace. And you can see how Hunter's Trace dips in. And yes, some of the houses in the back of that subdivision did flood, or it came right up to their slab, above their slab on their door. And now that they've got this other subdivision behind them, should we have another event like that, you know, they feel very concerned that it's going to flood. I haven't seen improvements or things that have been done to handle the situation where we are now. Again, I'm not against development and adding new places in, because that's why we're there. But at the same time, I think everything has to be level, done simultaneously. You know, take care of drainage, then you can add some construction. Same thing, you know. But I think we just keep adding subdivisions in there, and you run out of places for water to go. And eventually it has to go in certain little channels, because every time you build something, you just channel the water to another direction. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Schultz.
Good evening, Council. My name is Corey Schultz. I live at 40193 Fenway Avenue in Lot 96, and I'm the first person on Fenway on the east side, so I'm extremely concerned because our plot is lower than the western part of Fenway Avenue. But I moved in February of 2017, and I would like to, I don't have a place to show pictures, but I'd like to do that if I can. But since 2017 of February, of the ditch behind my house, which is filling, not because of our neighborhood, it's filling with all the neighborhoods to the north, has filled up past my property line 7 times. The biggest rain, April 2nd, was the worst, which the water was at least 2 feet past my property line, which areas flooded to the south of our neighborhood and into the Reese Lane project that is being built. I have a couple of pictures of that I'd like to show the council. According to the plant, as mentioned before, the plot is 18 feet versus phase 2 of Fenway Parker Place at 16 feet. My issues is how is a 5-foot deep retention pond on the east side of this project that I assume will be full of water, and so it'll be topped out at some point. So where does that water go? In addition, my understanding is that they're bringing in 4 inches of fill dirt, and according to the plot that I'd love to show you, I'm sure all of that fill dirt is going to be put on the east side where I'm concerned about flooding. In addition, in June of 16, during the meetings for Parker Place Phase 2 and Brookstone project, Parish officials and consulting engineer for Parker Place acknowledged a drainage fix for the area has not been developed, and there were errors in the drainage study. And just like the other people have mentioned, what has changed since then? Nothing. An engineer by the name of Chad Stevens, representing the development of Parker Place 2, said, quote unquote, "We have taken care of Parker Place 2 in and of itself, not to exacerbate the problem that already is there." That is a quote from an engineer in our area. I'm also concerned about lower home values. 50% of the new lots are smaller than ours, and the rest of the 50% of the lots in this new development are smaller than Phase 1. I'm not sure of the exact values, to be honest, but I would assume that based upon that, these are lower cost houses than ours. I have concerns about the backs of the homes facing Fenway Avenue. I face Fenway, and now I'm going to look at backyards, and the builder does not have a fence that they're doing. So I'm going to see multicolor, multi-fences, and I'm concerned about my property value.
Okay, your time, Mr.
Could I have 1 minute?
No.
No.
No, we just can't give you more than 3 minutes. We have to
Would you like to see the pictures?
Yes, if you don't mind, hand the pictures to
This
Secretary McKee.
flooding picture behind my home. This is a picture on Fenway Avenue. When the ditch behind me fills, this floods into the Reese Lane project to the south and to the east. If you think there isn't a flooding problem, this is the flooding areas to the south of Phase 2 Parker Place. That's a flooding problem that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Montragine? I might not have said that correctly. Metrogene, yes.
My name is Susan Metrogene. I represent Quail Creek. We're across from the Reese project. As we all know, this parish is growing too fast. The infrastructure cannot keep up. Highway 42 is a mess if you've ever driven down 42 at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's very dangerous. There's always accidents on that road. It's supposed to be widened, but I'm not sure it's going to be in my lifetime. There isn't adequate drainage. People on 929 flooded in August. The schools are very overcrowded. Students are in portable buildings, which is not really fair to them. The high school is going to be built in 5 to 10 years, which is going to be more concrete, more people, more traffic. From what I understand, the council is supposed to represent the people, not the builders. So I hope you all consider all the issues that are here, that are getting worse because of more development. It needs to slow down. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert McBride. Oh, is it Bride? No. Briel.
I'm Robert McBride, actually
McBride.
Bob's better. I live in Quail Creek. I live at the corner of Parker Road and Ascension 929, alias Bro Road. I am in the corner lot. You folks now own 2/10 of my lot. You took it away from me a couple of years ago. They told me in a meeting at the primary school that they were going to build a roundabout, and that's why they needed that property. What they did made sense. They cut the fence off, better view, but it's a four-way stop sign anyway. Anyway, the problem is, just as Ms. Sue said, this Reese Lane appeal immediately west of 929 from that property, those people flooded last year. And it was kind of unique because right after the flood, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after, I found out the proposed subdivision that was to be built, 28 acres at the time in that area, they were going to put 9,000 cubic yards of dirt. Where do you think the dirt was going to go? I mean, the water was going to go. Well, I'll make it as short as I can. A few days after I learned that that was the project, 9,000 cubic acres of dirt were going to be put on 28 acres, I started out of the subdivision one morning and there was a commercial van stopped in the left turn lane of the exit. And I pulled around and I saw it was commercial, and I saw a guy setting up a tripod, surveyor. So I used to cross the street, roll my window down, and I said, are you working on that new subdivision? He said, yes, sir, I'm just a surveyor. And I said, please tell your supervisors to rethink that 9,000 cubic yards of dirt, because look down the street. And when he looked down the street, he saw about 8 or 9 houses of the total property on the road waiting for pickup. It had flooded. And they were talking about putting 9,000 cubic feet of dirt and running more water over there. See, it's your responsibility. You're supposed to represent us, the homeowners. You're making the property with the taxes now. There's Ironwood being developed right there on Highway 942. That's a huge subdivision. Where are the kids going to go to school? Miss Metrojane's grandson is in the primary school there on Parker Road. And you just heard the lady tell you what the situation is there. It's your responsibility. You're the man. I put in 37 years, Exxon operations. I've been retired for 21 years. So I've been down the road a good while. I'm pretty old. 2 tours Army Infantry. So I don't want to fight any more wars. You guys, thank you much.
Thank you. Jennifer Touye.
Good evening. The Reese Lane subdivision application references a tie-in to Brookstone subdivision, which was approved by the Appeals Council in April 2016. The parish ordinances or the parish subdivision requirements state that if a contractor does not begin construction within 6 months of approval, the approval may be revoked. Whereas Reese Lane subdivision proposes to tie into a street that may never exist and a subdivision that could be revoked at the next Planning Commission meeting or any future meeting. The traffic associated with the Reese Lane proposal was also conducted in October last year less than 90 days after the 2016 flood. Given the effects of the flood on the surrounding areas with displaced homeowners, it should be a fair assumption that traffic on this day is not reflective of true traffic patterns. It should also be noted that while the traffic study has no recommendations for approval, the traffic study does not take into consideration the additional traffic impacts of the already approved Brookstone subdivision or any other new construction approved for the area. Based on Ascension Parish's subdivision regulations, if the Planning Commission denies an application, the applicant may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission no later than 30 days after the written decision of the Planning Commission. It was June 14th, 2017, when this subdivision was denied by the original Planning Committee. The appeal was filed August 8th, noting that it's 52 days after the denial. I'm not sure when the subdivision or the developers were notified in writing, but I do want to point out that was a 52-day window. It's requested that the Appeals Committee consider appealing or not approving the Reese Lane subdivision.
Okay. Next, I have either a Mr. or Mrs. Lopez on Fenway Avenue. And I can't read the first name. Here we go. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Heather Lopez, and I also live on Fenway Avenue. So we recently moved here, and we were told as we were purchasing our home, and we specifically asked, is this field going to be a subdivision? And our realtor told us, no, absolutely not. And so that was one of our reasons why we bought this house. So we worked really hard to get into the house that we were at, and then we were lied to about what was going to be developed in this property. And to us, that is not, that's not fair. And I think that you guys have the connections and the network that if you have realtors in the area, they should be telling people the truth, because now we're put in this area, we're put into this situation of having another subdivision go up, and which would possibly flood our home. And with this last storm, Harvey, the drainage ditch that is behind our house came right between 6 inches of our fence. And it's a ton of water. And so if you walk out to the other front side of our house, there's a drain from this field where y'all want to build these houses at. And you can see it's a foot of water that's draining into this ditch area, and only the left side of it is currently working. So I have called the city and I have placed in a ticket to let them know that this is a huge drainage issue. And so they did go out this week and they did tell me that I'm correct, that the drainage is not working properly from this field, and that the right side of it just sits there. So none of the water is draining properly on this right-hand side of this ditch. And then in this last week with all of the rain, our sewer in our neighborhood is also backing up because, once again, the people who built it said that the sewer was only going to hold 88 homes, and now it takes care of 126 homes. So where if you guys say that you're going to put in these new homes and the sewer line is supposedly not going to tie in to Parker Place, but yet we add an additional 40 houses, how do we know that that's not going to tie into there and have more raw sewer going down our road? So we all just need to think before we keep adding all of these houses. And by 6:45 in the morning, 42 is already backed up past Walgreens. So this traffic issue is huge. So you have to leave early just to be at work at 8. I mean, you have to leave at 6:30. So you're taking your children, getting up at 5:30 in the morning to make sure that you're at work on time. So clearly the traffic is also a large issue. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Mr. Percy. Mr. Percy, you represent the applicant, is that correct? So under our rules, I'll give you 3 minutes in this public comment period, and then later, if necessary, you get some more time as the applicant if that's necessary.
I
Okay?
appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Jimmy Percy on behalf of the appellant here tonight. And I'm going to do something a bit different than I think the last appeal did. I'm going to be very brief because I think the record speaks for itself. The first thing I'd like to do in my initial comments is introduce the record of what actually took place at the Planning and Zoning Commission. All of the submittals, that's all part of our appeal package, and I'd like to offer and introduce that into the record because that really is the only thing, it's my appreciation from a legal perspective that you can consider for purposes of this appeal because this is an appeal to you of what actually transpired at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Little bit of history, very brief. This is a very small 17-acre tract. The proposed subdivision is 50 lots. After submission of the plat, we worked with the staff. Staff made several recommendations, all of which were adopted by the applicant. Regarding connectivity, the connectivity issue that you've heard about, that was requested by the staff. That was provided by the applicant. Drainage issues, there was a proposal originally to divert a portion of Black Bayou. Staff said, please don't do that. Worked with the staff, did everything the staff asked, made significant changes in the preliminary plat, all at the request of the staff. As of now, this plat meets or exceeds every single regulation of this parish. Meets or exceeds. No waivers requested, no variances requested. Staff recommended approval. It's reviewed by your outside engineers. Your outside engineers made comments. All of the comments were addressed. Nothing unresolved. This is not a flood zone issue. There's a previous subdivision appeal that you recently heard where a flood zone was an issue. This is in flood zone X, the portion. The portions that are in the front of the subdivision, the wetlands area, undisturbed. Black Bayou, undisturbed. It was denied by the Planning Commission. I need to mention very briefly the Planning Commission meeting because there is a procedural issue. The night of the Planning Commission meeting, of the 7 members of the Planning Commission, only 4 were present. 1 was sitting as acting chairman, and when the vote came up on this, the application was denied 2-1. We would suggest that is a procedural issue that should and can be addressed by the council because not only was it not approved by a quorum or a majority of the commission, regardless of the requirements, but it wasn't even approved by a majority of those present at the meeting that night. I just raised that as a procedural issue for the council's consideration. The record reflects that there was no substantive evidence. Anecdotal evidence was issued just like this evening. And I am not going to demean one of those people who got up here and spoke because they spoke from their heart. I would urge them and the council to actually review the substantive evidence in the record, including the drainage study, the traffic study, all of which you require. I do want to address one thing, and if I'm getting close to my time, I can reserve
your time
this.
just expired.
I'm sorry?
It just expired.
And I'll address this later,
Okay.
and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have, but final comment, we respectfully request,
Didn't it just? Okay.
respectfully
I'm sorry.
request that you grant the appeal and reverse the decision of the Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So now we'll open up for questions or comments from the council.
Is that for this? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, we need a point of order ruling. It looks like there's another speaker is requesting. Is it too late for that, or?
It did, yes.
Just one quick comment.
Okay.
My name is Roland Wines. I live in Parker Place. And when the gentleman prior to me spoke about the staff, we were told by the engineering staff that they did not review the drainage study. They reviewed the methodology that they used to come up with the study. If the methodology that they used didn't work on prior models, how can it work on this model? We have a severe drainage problem. No matter what anyone says, we can be anecdotal or not, we've got pictures to prove we have a problem. We need to resolve the problem before we move forward. And I hope you reject the...
Thank you. Okay, so we're back at the council. Councilwoman Casso.
Mr. Dawson, this may be the more appropriate time, but I share the concerns with our legal counsel that we have a procedural problem. And so I suggest that this applicant take this back to planning and zoning, and let's resolve this in the appropriate way there, please, so that if an appeal is necessary, we do not have any question in our minds about the process.
So that's a form of a motion.
I will put that in the
That's a
form
form
of
of
a
a
motion,
motion to refer that back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's contingent on the applicant. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
that-
Mr.
I
Parrington? Is
understand.
that Yeah, that's contingent on the applicant's, so let's see if we have a second on that.
I second it.
Second by Councilman Joe. Okay. Mr. Percy, did you hear the motion, or are you guys in, would you agree to referring that back to Planning Commission? That has, Mr. Parrington can explain that better than me, the consequences of that.
Under the law, the planning commission either has to approve or disapprove. They can't, and so we wound up with 4 people there and 2 votes to not approve and 1 just not voting. And they have never adopted any bylaws. They haven't adopted Robert Rules of Order. There's a procedural issue there. I don't think this case is I don't think this thing will end here tonight, one way or the other. And I would much prefer to be in a court where we've had a sufficient vote on a matter.
So, okay, and so what I'm trying to clarify also is, what are we asking Mr.
If he
Percy
agrees to go back to the Planning and Zoning
Okay.
Commission.
Okay.
And I appreciate that explanation, and I appreciate that the motion is to refer, subject to some discussion by us. Here's the position that we are compelled to take, and I believe that your esteemed counsel will agree with what I'm about to say. We have no problem. If that's the will of the council to refer this matter back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we will do that. We have no problem with that. But I would like to make sure that the record is clear that we don't withdraw our appeal of that initial vote. If something different happens at the Planning Commission, that appeal becomes moot. But we can't, for all of my clients' reasons, withdraw our appeal. So if it comes without any withdrawal of the appeal, and I think we can do that, we have no problem with it, Mr. Chairman, and we reserve all of our rights, subject to the motion.
So are we good with that, Mr.
I don't
Parrington?
have any problems with that.
Okay. So we have a question, Mr. Lawler.
I have a question. I reviewed the record from the appeals committee. I didn't see that anybody recused themselves from the vote. Is that correct, or am I misreading?
The chairman just didn't vote.
Just didn't vote. Do we know if there was an error in tabulating voting?
No, I checked.
Okay. So we have Mr. Satterley.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could address Mr. Parrington's comments, and I agree with them. In fact, if it's the will of this body, esteemed body, I'd be willing to share an email that I sent to Chairman Pryor of the P&Z not too long ago, specifically asking him, when I had been asked by some folks that reviewed their very first meeting, it goes way, way back in former Ricky Compton's days, former planning director, planning and development director. Do you have bylaws? Do you follow Robert's Rules of Orders? I got back an email, like I say, I'll share, in which the answers were negative. And if you look at the film of that meeting, you will see that they opted, unlike myself and the other commissioners who were fired by a previous parish council before my first term, that we had bylaws. And like this council had adopted Robert's Rules of Order, but they were operating, they got rid of our 2 standing committees and decided that they don't need bylaws. I have informed Mr. Pryor and our planning director that this is mandated by state law, that an appointed body of this council have bylaws. So I think we're opening a real can of worms here tonight if we delay this further and expose this council and its appointed commissioners to the idea that they're operating right now, frankly, in my opinion, and I'll be graphic about it, by the seat of their pants. And so I don't support a delay, quite frankly. We had a vote by however they're operating. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Parrington, probably one way or another, this ain't the end of it. And by the way, what's the guarantee if we're going to defer this back to the P&Z, even with the appellant's will, which is necessary? I think Mr. Parrington's right there as well. How do we know by then that they're going to adopt bylaws? Is somebody going to write them? And in them bylaws, it's going to say they're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, et cetera. Yeah, I think it's problematic that we surely get all that done if we're going to go back to the square zero period and sort of reinvent our commission.
Did I hear that correctly? It's on there, currently on their agenda? Okay.
I spoke with them and they put it on the agenda.
Any further discussion? Okay, any opposition? We have a motion, we have opposition, Madam Secretary. The motion is to refer back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we have obtained the consent of the applicant.
Councilman Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Satterley.
No.
Councilman Kluot.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
No.
Councilwoman Casso.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Chairman Dawson.
Yes, the motion carries. It's the last item that we had. We have a motion to adjourn, Councilman Cagnolati, second by Councilman Johnson. In opposition. We're adjourned.